Chapter 17. Gift.
Ah!
The tumble through the air was dizzying. Had Sana's inner ear not been doped by the bots, she'd have hurled. She couldn't get her momentum under control. Her flailing attempts to grab onto literally anything had her smacking some bots out of their flight path. The sting and mild resistance gave her an idea that might save her sorry hide. Hooking the free bots into her clothes was easy enough, and each had a tiny amount of pull. It wasn't all that good, but it slowed her down enough that she could use her own strength to twist into a roughly upright position at the top of her arc. She was still moving dangerously fast, but at the very least she could tell she was headed for a rooftop and not the street. Then she was on the way down. The thing was, Lord Static could fly. He had constructs that could hover, and he could move with his mind. He could probably do wings if he wanted. Swarm would have settled for a parachute. The attempt to make one earned her a splitting headache. Fine. If she couldn't make a real one, she'd improvise. The best thing she could make for this was a cloak, so she threw together the biggest one she could and grabbed it by the corners. What few bots she had left hooked into her clothes and pulled up with what little power she could force out of them. It was the equivalent of tying a plastic bag to an action figure. It reduced her terminal velocity from fatal to painful upon landing, but hitting the roof was still going to hurt like hell. Once the crash site was close enough, she dissolved the cloak, hooked half the freed bots into her clothes, and threw the rest of them in front of her to act as a cushion. She absorbed a bit of the impact with her legs. Her bots absorbed more. It was the only thing between her and shattered bones, and dispersed the rest by rolling head over heels. 6 times. She finally came to a stop when she crashed into the railing on the far side of the roof. The birdies twirling over her head kept her from realizing how awkwardly she was positioned until she shook her head to clear them away. Her legs were hooked into the railing surrounding the edge of the roof and stuck above her head. It was bad enough that she was balanced mostly on her shoulders. Her arms were splayed out to either side, and her neck was rapidly developing a crick. The sound of a door slamming open had her tipping her head back to see a man in a sweater vest wielding a large book approaching rapidly. He seemed familiar, but she couldn't recognize him from her upside-down position until he shouted, "What are you doing here?" Oh, it was Cam. At least that answered the question of where she was.
Hi,
She wheezed and gave him what she hoped was a disarming smile.
I come in peace.
He shifted his grip on, was that a hardcover large print copy of Dune? But didn't lower it. Prove it.
How?
She shook her head.
Sorry, can I roll over? All my blood's rushing to my head, and it is mighty uncomfy.
He paused. Go ahead.
Much appreciated.
She unhooked her legs and let her body drop to the side, but made no move to get up.
That's better.
That seemed to trigger Cam's curiosity, if nothing else. Are you okay? He asked.
I had a fatal wound in my leg less than 5 minutes ago. Lord Static's successor is out for my blood, and I have bruises in places I didn't know existed. Also a concussion. Also, you might brain me, and it would suck to die that way after everything I've been through.
He relaxed his hold on the book. You're not very intimidating like this.
Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence.
She slowly sat up and leaned against the railing. Her head spun.
Ugh, everything hurts. I don't suppose you'd be willing to spot me an aspirin?
I don't have any.
Nuts. Worth a shot.
I could get you some water.
Would you?
The dry mouth had been a small irritation compared to everything else, but now that she was right side up, it was vying for a higher priority with a vengeance.
You'd be my favorite.
He grinned at that and finally lowered his weapon. Don't go anywhere. Something tells me you've got a heck of a story, and I want to hear it.
Singing for my supper, huh? You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Whoever you are.
The name's Cam, and you're Swarm.
The one and only.
She did jazz hands and made a few of her loose bots pop like fireworks from her fingertips.
Except no substitutes, clones, or evil doppelgangers.
And how do I know you're not one of those?
They have dignity.
Cam considered that for a second. Good enough for me, he declared with all the cheer of someone who knew the bit. The familiarity of the banter felt like slipping on a broken-in work glove.
I'll have you know I'm the epitome of grace most of the time,
Swarm said with comedic seriousness. Cam laughed and left. Alone with her raging backache, Swarm considered the merits of bailing. On one hand, she had no doubt Cam would be as good as his word, and water sounded heavenly. On the other, being around Cam as Swarm was practically asking for him to figure out Sana's secrets. She dithered long enough that it became a moot point. Cam returned with an armful of water bottles and packs of gummies. He handed a bottle and pack over, then took a seat on the ground. "Drink up, then start talking." She didn't bother to reply before downing the whole thing. He rolled another over, and she thanked him before drinking half in a much more controlled manner. Cam whistled, impressed. "Wow, you okay?"
Lost a lot of blood earlier. I'm really thirsty.
She ripped open the gummies and ate the whole pack in one mouthful. She mumbled around the stickiness. "Slow down. It's not going anywhere, and there's plenty more." She swallowed the lump and finished off the bottle.
I have to boost my blood sugar. I'm gonna get snappy soon, and you seem too nice to snap at. Sorry for my manners.
"Oh, believe me, I've seen worse. Kids' workshops," he explained at her questioning head tilt. She made a noise of understanding and cracked the third bottle he handed to her. They lapsed into comfortable silence until Sana's stomach was full.
You wanted a story?
She asked. "Regarding how Calabria's newest super found himself upside down on my workplace's roof, if you please."
That I can provide.
She gave him a bare-bones recounting of Prince Snow's plan, the race, and Faye's eviction. Cam was a good listener, and his expressions throughout the telling made things easier. It was almost familiar, like a book talk Sana would have with him. She had to catch herself a few times when she came close to spilling an in-joke they shared. Cam made a quiet noise in the back of his throat when Swarm's tale was done. "Bad day," he said, as though a library patron had vented to him about red lights and cold coffee.
One of the worst ones I've had recently. Might even stay in the top 10 once the year's out.
"You plan on accumulating more?"
It's kinda inevitable in this line of work.
"You're gonna stick with it?"
It's complicated.
She tucked her knees up, rested her chin on them, and wrapped her arms around her legs.
I'm not cut out for heroics. I have a cowardly heart and a selfish head. My super weapon is a villain's creation, and I can barely fend off Prince Snow. This place needs a super's aid, but what kind of defender can I possibly be?
"Even coward hearts can bleed."
Bleed out, more like.
She rubbed her calf to erase the phantom sensation of no longer present wounds.
I only put on the costume because the people I love were in danger.
The noise was non-judgmental, and a knot coiled tightly in her chest eased. Cam gave her an understanding smile and said, "It's not a bad reason to don a cape."
I don't love a lot of people,
she confessed. It felt like coming clean.
Not enough to share with everyone.
"There's an easy solution for that. Fall in love with the city." She snorted.
Like it's that simple.
"I'm serious." He shifted forward and looked her dead in the eye, or as close as he could get with her goggles in the way. "Wander around in your off time. Find the nooks and crannies nobody else knows about. Pick a restaurant or cafe and get to know the staff. You're super. Watch the traffic from a rooftop. Anything similar. Anything to forge an attachment to this place. Call Calabria your home and mean it. Fall in love with this city and it'll never find a better defender." It was a good idea. Shockingly well thought out. She narrowed her eyes at him.
I haven't decided to stay after the prince is dealt with.
He shook his head. "You have. You just don't want to admit it."
Are you sure you're a librarian and not a therapist?
"How'd you know I'm a librarian?" "I know you," she didn't say.
This is a library. You work here. Plus, you're wearing a sweater vest when it's hot enough to fry an egg on a car hood.
He chuckled. "Point. I am a librarian. I'm a friend, too, if you'd like me to be."
Thank you,
she said, and she was surprised by her own sincerity.
I needed a friend. Still do. But you shouldn't say that.
"I wouldn't have offered it if I didn't mean it."
Befriending me's not a good idea right now. Or did you miss the bit where Prince Snow wants to tear my heart out?
"You don't have to visit. Nobody'll know anything but us. Won't it be enough to know that someone out there cares that you're alive?"
Well, when you put it that way, yeah, that'll do. Thanks, Cam.
"Don't mention it. Just don't go crazy or get replaced by an evil doppelganger. I hear they have dignity, and seeing you act dignified would break my brain." Swarm pushed herself to her feet and stretched.
I should probably get going. Take care of yourself.
"Same to you, Shorty."
It's not my fault I'm vertically challenged.
Cam offered to let her out through the front door, but she had a less conspicuous exit in mind. The railing had proven sturdy after her crash, so she climbed up onto it. With a lazy salute, she hopped off the roof and landed square on the fire escape a floor down. Cam's panicked shout and scramble to her jump site were hilarious, and she laughed even as he leaned over and swatted at her head. Not that he could reach it, but it was the thought that counted. Prank quota filled, she gave him another salute and climbed down the staircase. It was easy to call up her roller skates and flee into the back alleys from there. Her pants were a lost cause. As soon as she found a semi-hidden nook, she shed them and called up a pair of shorts in replacement. Her skates went to sneakers with a click of her heels, and the raincoat, pants, and accessories went in a bot-made shoulder bag. She groaned when she realized she had to go the long way around the park to get back home. It wasn't that bad, but she wanted a cold pack and a blanket pile sooner rather than later. In an ideal world, she'd be able to burn off some of the emotional overload in her workshop, but that wasn't going to happen without some sweet talking. The probability of a successful try at that in her current state was nil. She made it home and almost tripped over a package on the front porch. It was too big and heavy to pick up with one hand, so she opened the door and played a game of cat soccer to keep garlic and bread inside while she hauled the box in. Once the cats and package were safely behind closed doors, Sana hoisted the box onto the counter and called, "I'm home!" Her mom all but teleported into the kitchen. "What happened? Are you hurt? How did you get away from Prince Snow?" "Prince Snow had a plan to take the bots that didn't work out. I won a race. I got hurt, but Faye healed me as a prize, and Faye made sure we left the park in different directions. Dad?" "Right here." The deep voice drained the last of the tension from her body. Her dad was leaning against the doorway, totally unharmed. "And I'd prefer the non-Cliff Notes version, thank you. Especially that bit about Faye's involvement. Did you get hurt after Prince Snow cut you off?" "No." Now stop dodging the question. They'd want more detail than the retelling she'd given Cam. "First off, I'm okay. I mean, Prince Snow hurt me a whole lot, but Faye made sure I didn't die." "Not a reassuring start, sweetheart," her mom said. "Sorry." She gave them a more thorough recounting of what had gone down since Prince Snow had abducted her from Ace Tech. She did downplay how dangerous her leg injury had been, and glossed over the conversations between her and the prince, but otherwise gave them honesty. By the end, her mom had gone pale, and her dad had gone from neutral to frowning. Now desperate for a distraction, Sana checked the box. Any conversation in an uncomfortable silence. To her surprise, the label had her name on it. "I didn't order this." "Sana, hold on, something's weird here." She retrieved a knife and slit the tape holding the box shut. "That can wait. I want to check you over." "Yeah, sure, one—" The flaps opened to reveal stacks of cash. "Second." Oh dear. Before her parents could ask, she tipped the box so they could see. "I don't suppose you two wanted to give me an advance on my allowance." "Definitely not. How much money is that?" Her mom leaned over, took a stack, and started thumbing through it. "It's non-sequential. Fives." "This is ones." Her dad plucked another stack and followed her mom's example. Also out of order. Sana looked in the box. "Seems like there's more stacks of ones than fives." She sifted through another layer of money stacks before finding a small cardboard box underneath. "That's not all." "Take it out. Might as well investigate the whole lot in one go." Her dad placed his stack on the counter. "That was 100. I'd bet the rest are in stacks of 100 too. Sort 'em by denomination as you unpack 'em." He was right on the money, except for the 20 hundreds in their own binding. The total sum wound up being $2,000 each of ones, fives, tens, 20s, and hundreds. The pile was mind-boggling. Along with the money, the package had also contained several smaller boxes, all of which were laid out on the counter now. Sana had no idea what was going on. "Before you ask, I haven't been involved in any counterfeiting schemes recently," she joked. Her mom had pulled out one of the hundreds and was holding it up to the light. "How about bank robberies? This looks real, though I'm admittedly not an expert." "Definitely not." She picked up one of the small boxes and was surprised at its weight. It was sort of familiar, but she couldn't say how. Maybe it was a mislabel. She hoped it was a mislabel. The looks on her parents' faces said they believed it was an accident about as much as she did. "Yeah, I thought so. Hand me the knife." Her dad passed over his pocket knife instead of the steak knife she'd been using, but a cutting implement was a cutting implement. The tape gave way to reveal a cube of styrofoam secured with yet more tape. Sana recognized the packaging style. Praying she was wrong, she slit the tape on 3 sides and flipped back the lid it had secured. Glass panels stared back at her. She didn't throw the box away from herself, but it was a near thing. She did put it back on the counter and take several steps away, though. "What's wrong?" her dad asked. He looked in the box and understood instantly. "Ah, it's not a mislabel." She swallowed, flexed her free hand, and held out the pocket knife. "Can you open the rest?" The other boxes held bottles of flux, polish, and black and copper patina, coils and coils of lead-free solder, copper foil, and more glass. Sana crept closer with each new reveal until she was close enough to examine the glass. It was all her favorite colors for sun catchers. There was even a clear pane etched with a floral pattern. She ran a finger over the glass, half expecting the etched vines to bite her. The bills, while alarming, weren't really scary. Money was impersonal, but glass in her favorite colors and textures, bottles of patina, lead-free solder, that was scary. That was for her. Her hands flexed again before she requested the knife back. One box remained. It had been at the very bottom of the package, and something about it felt important. Her dad handed the knife over without a word. She cut open the box. What awaited her was a black suit with red accents and a red and white symbol like a target over the heart. The symbol was familiar. She designed it on a whim a couple months ago. It was no target. It was a stylized nanobot. "Mom? Dad?" she said in the flat tone of someone thrown into shock and out the other side. "I think I've got a stalker."